My name was Ahmed. I was an Imam, a silent guardian of faith in a world that demanded unwavering loyalty. For 30 years, I stood before my community, draped in respect and authority, reciting verses from the Quran as if they held all the answers. But as I lectured on the path of obedience, a storm raged within me, a hunger for something I couldn't name, something I felt I'd lost. Each prayer became a weight that crushed my spirit, each moment of worship an echo of my doubts. One fateful night, everything changed. A brutal crash hurled me into darkness, into a void where time ceased to exist. But in that stillness, an unexpected light pierced the shadows. It was there that I met Jesus. He called to me, not as a figure of conflict or debate, but as an embodiment of grace and truth that shattered my very foundation. I was shown the veil of deception that cloaked not only my faith, but the broader world, a design crafted to mute the soul's cries for liberation. As the light surrounded me, I understood. The struggle I faced was not merely personal. It was a universal battle, one that had quietly infiltrated the hearts and minds of many, binding them in chains they could not see. I returned to my world, a world that now felt foreign, teeming with oppressive silence and judgment. My family branded me a heretic. I became a target of their disdain, forced to carry the weight of my awakening in secret. In quiet moments, I sought refuge in the Bible, desperately yearning to understand the truth I had glimpsed. I discovered a community that mirrored my own journey, souls who had danced with doubt and emerged reborn. But the shadows of fear lurked close, whispering threats of exposure and retribution. This is the essence of my testimony, a call to those equally shackled by their own beliefs. Freedom finds its root in truth, even when that search brings pain. Today, I invite you to walk alongside me as I reveal the transformative power of faith that transcended my rigid upbringing, granting me a purpose I never thought possible. Before we embark on this journey, I want to hear from you. Comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let's connect through this shared pursuit of truth. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. You won't want to miss the revelations that await. In the conservative neighborhood of Saudi Arabia where I grew up, life was suffocating in its rigidity. From an early age, I was taught to adhere strictly to Islamic traditions, and there was an unspoken rule against questioning anything that was held sacred. Honor and reputation were paramount, and the slightest deviation could invite scrutiny or condemnation. I became adept at silencing my doubts, burying questions deep within as I sought to become a respected figure in my community. Yet no matter how hard I tried, a nagging emptiness followed me, a spiritual void masked by daily rituals and unwavering obedience. My life changed dramatically one fateful evening while reading the Quran. As I sat on the edge of my bed, immersed in the familiar verses, a feeling of unease washed over me. Suddenly, I found myself overwhelmed by an inexplicable wave of darkness. It felt as though something was reaching out to me, challenging the very foundations of my beliefs. I closed my eyes, hoping it was just a fleeting moment of doubt. But instead, I was thrust into a profound, near-death experience. In that instant, I felt as if my spirit left my body, entering a realm filled with blinding light. In that radiant expanse, I encountered Jesus. It was a moment of pure revelation, marked by an intensity that I had never experienced. His presence filled me with warmth and peace, contrasting sharply with the fear and uncertainty I had carried. As he spoke my name, I felt every fiber of my being respond in recognition. Then came the revelations, truths that sliced through the veils of deception I had lived under. Jesus revealed the hidden agendas at play within the political and social systems that governed us, showing me how lies and manipulation had shaped the world I thought I understood. He illuminated the spiritual war that was raging around and within us, how many of us struggled in silence, shackled by beliefs designed to keep us ignorant and divided. The elite played their roles, controlling narratives and stifling truth, all while the world remained oblivious to the forces shaping their realities. I witnessed visions of a humanity caught in the throes of conflict, a fabric of society fraying beneath the weight of deception. This was not merely a personal journey, but a call to awaken, not just for me, but for all souls yearning for liberation from the chains of falsehood. As the vision began to fade, I felt a desperate urgency gripping my heart. I understood the magnitude of my experience. This wasn't simply an encounter with a divine being. It was a commissioning, an invitation to step into a purpose greater than myself. Returning to my body, I was filled with a mix of dread and excitement, knowing that I had been entrusted with the task of guiding others toward the truth I had seen. But I was acutely aware of the risks. The fear of rejection loomed large in my mind. Would my community embrace the message of awakening, or would they cast me out as a heretic? The growing tension between my new understanding and the expectations of my life felt overwhelming, yet I could not turn back. The truth was alive within me, and I knew I had to share it. In my life as a Quran teacher, I'd crafted an image of respectability, adhering strictly to the rituals and teachings that had been passed down to me. At 30, I was well regarded within my community, a pillar of discipline and faith. Yet, beneath that exterior, I struggled with an emotional emptiness that clawed at my essence. It was a constant ache, a profound dissatisfaction that I could not articulate. Rather than finding fulfillment in prayer and devotion, I often felt suffocated by the rigid norms surrounding me, as if I were trapped in a cage of expectations that left little room for questioning or growth. Every lesson I imparted to my students felt increasingly tinged with irony. I was teaching principles I felt disconnected from, reciting verses that no longer resonated within my heart. The weight of tradition hung heavily over me, and I often found solace in the quiet of the night, reflecting on the struggles that shadowed my spirit. It was during one of those restless nights, while reading the Quran, that I felt the first stirrings of something profound, a flicker of doubt mixed with longing for a deeper truth. The words on the page shifted before my eyes, sparking thoughts of a reality that lay beyond what I had been taught. Then came the turning point, a moment that would alter the entire trajectory of my life. A sudden illness struck, leaving me confined to my bed, teetering between life and oblivion. In that vulnerable state, I experienced what felt like a near-death experience, a journey that pulled me into a realm beyond comprehension. There, amidst darkness, a blinding light enveloped me. In that light stood Jesus, radiating an overwhelming sense of peace and love. As he spoke my name, I felt every part of my being respond, a reassurance that transcended my earthly struggles. In that divine encounter, Jesus revealed truths hidden beneath layers of deception that had long clouded my understanding. I witnessed visions of the spiritual war that raged not only within my soul, but also in the hearts of countless others who were ensnared by fear and ignorance. He unveiled the hidden agenda of the elite, showing me how power was manipulated to maintain control over people's lives, perpetuating division and strife. The revelation was staggering. The very system I had revered was built on manipulation, keeping individuals from experiencing true faith and enlightenment. As the visions expanded, I saw the interconnected nature of our struggles. The wars fought across the globe were not just about territory. They were manifestations of an inner battle, a fight for the truth that could free those trapped in despair. The truth I had yearned for was buried under layers of falsehood that climate our minds and spirits. As I returned to consciousness, filled with both awe and trepidation, I understood. This was more than a personal awakening. It was a call to arms, a mission to guide others toward the light I had encountered amid the shadows. But the fear of losing my world hardened within me, and I faced a dilemma. Would I have the strength to step boldly into the unknown and share this awakening, risking everything I had ever known for the pursuit of truth? As I stood in the mosque for prayer, a growing void enveloped me, creating an unsettling dissonance within my spirit. I had always approached my daily prayers with reverence and discipline, yet recently, each recitation felt increasingly hollow, as if I were merely going through the motions. It gnawed at me, this sense of disconnect that followed me like a shadow, whispering doubts that I dared not voice. The rigid structure of my faith, which once brought comfort, now suffocated me, trapping me within doctrines I felt unable to question. I often found myself staring at the pages of the Quran, trying to grasp the depth I once believed in, but feeling only a haunting emptiness in return. Amidst my confusion, vivid dreams began to invade my sleep, shaking me to my core. In these dreams, I encountered scenes of conflict and turmoil, images that felt strikingly real and alarmingly prophetic. They revealed shadowy figures manipulating events around me, powerful elites orchestrating societal deception to control our minds and stifle our spirits. The spiritual war I sensed around me pressed deeper into my consciousness, forcing me to confront the possibility that I had been blinded by the very faith I held dear. Each dream pulled me further into an unsettling reality, nudging me toward an uncomfortable truth that was buried beneath layers of accepted belief. As the tension within me mounted, I couldn't ignore the questions clawing at my mind. I began to see the flaws in the religious system I once embraced wholeheartedly. My heart wrestled with the recognition that fear was weaponized to maintain control, perpetuating a culture that discouraged questioning. I realized that many of us lived under a hidden agenda, a narrative woven tightly into the fabric of our society that dictated how we should think and act. The spirit of awakening was calling out for recognition, and I felt like I was standing on the precipice, teetering between the familiar and the unknown. On one particularly tumultuous night, I was again drawn into a dream that felt strikingly different. I found myself in a realm of pure light, where I encountered Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, infused with a love that pierced through the darkness I had been grappling with. As he spoke my name, I felt every doubt and fear dissipate, replaced by an indescribable assurance. In that moment of connection, I was shown a clear vision of the spiritual war at play, not just within my soul, but across the globe. Jesus revealed the deeper truths about our existence, illuminating the manipulation at work and the urgent need for awakening in a world shrouded in deception. I awoke from that dream radically changed, as if a heavy veil had been lifted. The revelations flooded my consciousness with urgency, igniting a fierce desire to pursue the truth. I understood that this wasn't merely a personal journey. It was a calling to awaken others as well. But the fear of confronting my community weighed heavily on me. Each encounter with the people I had once blindly respected felt daunting. Would they embrace the new understanding I had, or cast me aside, branded a heretic? The stakes felt incredibly high, yet I could sense the pull of something greater, a divine purpose that demanded I step forward in faith, assuring me that I was not alone in this fight illuminated by the light of truth. The night of the accident started like any other, a typical evening in my life as an Imam. I had spent the day teaching, discussing the verses of the Quran with my students, and upholding the values of my faith. However, as I drove home that night, an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the sense that something was off, a whisper of doubt that lurked just beneath the surface of my usually steadfast belief. The streets were dimly lit, and as I navigated a winding road, everything changed in an instant. The crash took place so suddenly, there was little time to react. Metal crunched against metal, and for a moment, time stood still. I felt an intense jolt and saw darkness enveloping me. It was as if I was slipping away from my body, detached from the chaos that had erupted around me. When the consciousness crept back in, I found myself in a dark desert, a landscape barren and void of life. The expanse stretched endlessly, a stark contrast to the life I had known, and there was an overwhelming sense of solitude. I felt lost in an abyss, shadows clawing at the edges of my vision, and as I tried to orient myself, dread settled in my heart. Then from the darkness, a blinding light pierced through, illuminating the desolate surroundings. It was a light that seemed to hold warmth and hope, unlike anything I had ever seen. As it began to envelop me, I recognized the figure stepping into the light, Jesus. When he called my name, it resonated within me like a symphony of truth, grounding me in a way that nothing else ever had. His presence filled my spirit with a profound love, an understanding that transcended human comprehension. In that moment, all my doubts and fears evaporated, replaced by clarity. Jesus began to speak to me, imparting revelations that shook the very foundations of my beliefs. He unveiled the hidden agenda of the elite, showing how they manipulated the narratives we live by, casting shadows that cloud our understanding. The spiritual war we are all entangled in became starkly apparent. I witnessed the deceptions that trapped so many in cycles of fear and division. The truth was laid bare before me, exposing the distractions of religious systems that often draw us away from the deeper spiritual realities we are meant to embrace. I saw how the conflicts and divisions in society were not merely political, but a reflection of this larger battle for our souls. As the revelations unfolded, I felt both liberated and burdened. Yes, I had gained understanding, but with that understanding came the grave responsibility to share it. The urgency to awaken others surged within me, a call to stand against the deception that kept so many in darkness. I could feel the weight of what lay ahead, knowing that stepping into this mission would require extraordinary courage. I was on the brink of a monumental shift, one that would not only redefine my life, but would also challenge the very fabric of the community I had devoted myself to. Would I have the strength to bring this truth to light, or would fear hold me captive? As I stood in that desert, bathed in the light of Jesus, I felt the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but imbued with hope and possibility. When I returned home after my life-altering experience, I felt like a stranger in my own space. The silence of the night contrasted sharply with the revelations that now filled my mind, and I was confronted by an overwhelming sense of isolation. My family, once a source of support and love, now appeared as a wall of accusations and disbelief. They treated me with suspicion, their faces twisted in confusion and anger, as they labeled me a heretic for the transformations I had undergone. Each word they hurled at me felt like a dagger, piercing through the fragile fabric of my newfound faith. I could feel their resentment, fueled by a fear of the unknown, and it weighed heavily on my heart. My family had devoted their lives to a system that had provided structure and meaning, and my departure from that path was a betrayal they couldn't comprehend. Verbal confrontations escalated into moments of physical aggression, with my father's disappointment cutting deeper than any blow could. I stood there, torn between guilt for causing this pain and a fierce conviction that I had to embrace the truth revealed to me by Jesus. The spiritual war raging within me was fierce, and I struggled to find balance amidst the conflicting emotions swirling around me. Nights became particularly difficult. In the quiet solitude of my room, I grappled with the weight of my choices. Every whisper in the dark seemed to echo the accusations thrown at me, the sense of isolation deepening each moment. I often found myself reflecting on the revelations Jesus had, shared, the truths about the deceptive systems we had long honored. The realization that the elite manipulated narratives to maintain control gnawed at me. I understood that my awakening wasn't just about me. It was about unveiling the deceptions that kept so many trapped, unable to seek the truth that could set them free. Each passing day felt heavier, the burden of my inner conflict intensifying. I yearned to share the light I had found, to awaken others to the truth I now held, but the fear of rejection suffocated my resolve. How could I convey what I had learned to those who clung so tightly to their beliefs? My family was in the grips of a hidden agenda that blinded them to the broader reality of suffering and manipulation in the world. It was suffocating to witness. I felt as if the more I learned, the more distant I became from the people I loved. The irony of fighting a spiritual war against the backdrop of my own family haunted me. In that yearning surged an urgent desire to reach out to others who may feel lost in their own darkness. I began to imagine what it would look like to share my testimony in a broader context, speaking to those who might be questioning their own beliefs amid the chaos. Each thought of evangelism brought with it a swell of hope. Yet the fear of loss and the threat of hostility loomed large, casting a shadow over my spirit. I recognized, however, that the spiritual war was not merely an external one. It was also an internal battle that I, alone, needed to confront. I had to find the courage to step out, even if it meant facing further rejection and isolation. The deeper understanding of truth I had been given demanded action, and I could no longer remain silent in the face of the spiritual deception that surrounded us all. In secret, I began to study the Bible, feeling as if I had stumbled into forbidden territory. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. My heart raced with every verse I read, echoing the revelations I had experienced during my encounter with Jesus. Each page illuminated truths that had long been buried beneath layers of deception. I found myself captivated by the life of Christ, his teachings resonating with the deepest parts of my soul. This exploration wasn't just about understanding another faith. It felt like a personal restoration, a reclaiming of my spirit from the confines of a system that had once defined me. Alongside my reading, I sought out testimonies from others who had walked a similar path. These inspiring videos were a lifeline that connected me to a community of believers, each sharing their own stories of awakening, struggle, and redemption. Watching their journeys unfold, I felt a profound sense of belonging for the first time in years. I realized I wasn't alone in this fight against the lies and manipulation that had kept us bound. However, lurking behind this newfound connection was an ever-present fear of exposure. If my family or community discovered my activities, the consequences could be dire. I formed bonds with these clandestine Christians, often communicating under the veil of anonymity. Each interaction filled my heart with hope, yet I remained anchored by fear. The spiritual war I faced wasn't merely internal. It was manifest in the risk of losing everything I had known and cherished. On one hand, there was the intoxicating allure of the truth I was uncovering, and on the other, the suffocating weight of tradition that sought to pull me back. The stakes were increasingly high, and the tension in my life rose with each passing day. I could feel the walls closing in, knowing that the deeper I delved into this new reality, the further I would drift from the life I had built. In those quiet moments of contemplation, I often reflected on the hidden agenda that shaped our spiritual landscape. I began to see clearly how institutions, backed by the elite, manipulated narratives to maintain control. This wasn't just a matter of personal belief. It was a widespread strategy that affected countless individuals. The divisions within our society became glaringly apparent. As I learned to navigate this new understanding, I felt both empowered and burdened. How could I possibly convey this truth to those still entrenched in a system that seemed impenetrable? Would my voice be heard, or would it become another casualty in this wider battle for awareness? As I moved deeper into my journey, I realized that I had to confront these fears head on. I started sharing my story within the safety of my newfound community, feeling the training wheels of my faith slowly lift. With each encounter, I felt the pulse of the awakening reverberate through our discussions. This was not only a personal transformation, it was a movement, a collective awakening against the deception that kept us all in chains. I understood now that sharing my testimony was part of the spiritual warfare we faced. It wasn't just about my liberation. It was about shedding light on the truth so that others might also find their way out of the darkness. The urgency to act weighed upon me, thick with the knowledge that the time for awakening was now. But could I truly step forward and risk it all, embracing a future where the truth hung in the balance? Recognizing my experience as a calling was both exhilarating and terrifying. In the aftermath of my encounter with Jesus, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose coursing through my veins. It was as if a divine light had ignited within me, illuminating the path that lay ahead. I could no longer keep this truth to myself. It demanded to be shared, even if it meant risking everything I held dear. The revelation of the spiritual war that surrounded us, an unseen battle for the hearts of humanity, was now mine to bear witness to. This truth could no longer remain a secret. It was my responsibility to awaken others from the slumber of deception that had entrapped them. As I began to pray for guidance, I was met with a wave of conviction. Each prayer felt like a step closer to fulfilling this newfound mission, a calling that echoed deep within my soul. I envisioned myself standing before my community, sharing the transformative love of Jesus and the truths he had revealed. I understood that the elite had long manipulated our beliefs, crafting a hidden agenda that served their own interests while keeping the masses oppressed. It pierced my heart to think of how many souls remained in chains, blindly following narratives that stifled their potential for spiritual awakening. However, the risks of this decision loomed large in my mind. Would my family and friends embrace this new chapter of my life, or would they drive me away, fearing the very awakening I hoped to share? I was aware of the societal norms that governed my community, the unyielding expectations that demanded adherence and loyalty above all else. Stepping out to advocate for the truth would invite scrutiny, perhaps even rejection. But as fear threatened to clutch my heart, I remembered the warmth of Jesus' presence, the strength that had propelled me through my darkest moments. I sought refuge in my newfound community, the clandestine group of Christians I had connected with in secret. They understood the struggles of walking this path, the challenges of maintaining one's faith in an atmosphere ripe with skepticism. In our gatherings, we shared powerful testimonies of awakening, reinforcing one another's resolve, while nurturing the flame of hope. I began to feel empowered, realizing that I wasn't alone in this journey. Together, we formed a collective force, ready to confront the spiritual war we faced head-on, each of us committed to spreading the light of truth against the shadow of deception. As I prepared to step into this role, the urgency of my mission intensified. I felt the call to penetrate the hearts of those still ensnared in ignorance, friends, family, anyone who would listen. I wanted to awaken them to the realities revealed to me, the manipulation that underpinned societal conflicts. The truths about technology, warfare, and division floated through my mind like a tide, waiting to break upon the shores of consciousness. I understood that my purpose transcended my own fears. It was about igniting a spiritual awakening that could shatter the barriers that kept us apart. Although uncertainty loomed, the fire of truth pushed me forward, compelling me to embrace the unknown and proclaim the awakening that had forever transformed my life. In a moment that felt like the final thread of my old life snapping, I made the decision to leave everything I had ever known behind. Standing in the familiar corners of my home, I could almost hear the echoes of my family's voices, a symphony of love wrapped in traditions that now felt stifling. I had become a stranger in my own skin, and that realization burned fiercely within me. It was a symbolic act of rebirth, one that demanded I assume a new identity, unshackling myself from the expectations and fears that had confined me for so long. I felt both exhilarated and terrified, as if I were stepping into unknown waters, buoyed by the revelations that Jesus had gifted me during my near-death experience. As I prepared to embark on this new path, the weight of suffering loomed large. Leaving my home, my family, and my community behind was not a choice made lightly. I grieved deeply for what I was losing, yet in that grief lay the seeds of hope. I had tasted the truth, and it was undeniably powerful. This truth ignited a fire in me. It drove me to share the light I had found with others still wandering in darkness. I could no longer stand idly by as the spiritual war raged around me, the battle for souls caught in the manipulative web woven by the elite. With each step forward, I felt an increasing urgency to plant those seeds of hope wherever I went. The new city offered anonymity, a chance to build a life free from the constraints that had once defined my existence. But with this new beginning came the ever-present fear of exposure. My heart raced at the thought of someone discovering my past. The people I encountered were unaware of the internal struggle still unfolding within me. I had to tread carefully, balancing the desire to share my journey with the need to protect myself. Yet each small victory, every spark of interest I ignited in others, felt like a confirmation that I was on the right path. The connections I formed with fellow seekers only deepened my resolve, showing me that I was part of something much larger than myself. As I shared my testimony, recounting the life-altering encounter with Jesus, I witnessed the profound impact it had on others. Their eyes would light up, and I could sense them grasping at fragments of hope. I felt their yearning for truth, a truth that had been obscured by layers of cultural and societal deception. Each conversation became a battlefield, reminding me of the urgency of the spiritual war we collectively faced. As I spoke, I realized that awakening others was not just a personal mission. It was a calling to dismantle the hidden agendas that shrouded our society and to expose the deception that kept us divided. Yet as I forged ahead, the shadows of my past hovered behind me, serving as a constant reminder of the sacrifices I had made. The journey was fraught with challenges, and doubt occasionally crept in, whispering unsettling thoughts. Would I ever reconcile with my family? Would they understand the transformation I had undergone? The anxiety threatened to overwhelm me, yet I clung tightly to the promise of hope that accompanied my awakening. I could not let fear dictate my path. Rather, I had to embrace the unknown and trust in the light that Jesus had shown me. With each passing day, I resolved to be a beacon of truth, nurturing the seeds of awakening in others while bravely stepping into the fullness of my new identity. As I share the remnants of my journey, I realize how profoundly interconnected we all are, tethered to a divine narrative that transcends our understanding. In that moment when Jesus spoke my name amidst the blinding light, I felt the pulse of something greater, an urgent call for awakening not just for me, but for a world quietly suffocating under the weight of ignorance. What if all of us are merely echoes of this call, standing on the precipice of rediscovery, yearning to break free from the chains that bind us? Every day, we are besieged by a relentless tide of misinformation, a manipulation that seeks to divide and conquer our spirits. It isn't just an external battle. It's a spiritual war raging within, a fight for authenticity in the face of overwhelming deception. And now, more than ever, we must gather the courage to question what has been ingrained in us. What revelations might await you if you dared to look deeper? What truths would unfold if you chose to confront the shadows lurking beneath your own beliefs? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt that deep yearning for a truth that evades easy answers? Let's explore this spiritual journey together, connecting the dots of our experiences as we awaken to a broader reality. Your story matters, and in sharing it, we begin to illuminate the path for others who may be wandering in darkness. If this resonates with you, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and turning on the notification bell. Each episode is crafted with purpose, revealing the truths that need to be dissected and discussed. What comes next could be the key that unlocks a deeper understanding of the reality we share. In our next video, we'll dive into another gripping testimony, the remarkable journey of an individual who grappled with their faith and emerged transformed, much like I did. Together, we will discover that every story carries the potential to awaken the soul. I'm Ahmed, and I thank you for journeying with me. Remember, the quest for truth will always illuminate the way for those willing to seek it. Until next time, hold on to that light